Hey everybody, this is Brian.
Jason.
And this is the Perfectly Screwed Podcast, episode 53. What's happening everybody? You know what? The first thing I wanted to tell you...
Not much, how are you?
I'm groovy.
Good.
Last week we posted an episode that was extra for you guys because me and Jason did not have time to actually do this. But this week we are here.
Yeah, we're live.
Yeah, we're live now.
For now.
Yeah. But you know what? I wanted to tell you something, actually, and I was going to do it. I was going to tell you before we started recording, but I'm going to do it so the whole audience can hear. Have you heard about this new TikTok video recently?
No, I have not.
It's the first proof that we might actually live in a simulation. 100%. I've seen it repeatedly. It was caught on CCTV camera. You know what a CCTV camera is, right? Like an internal camera for like restaurants and stores, and it's a security camera.
Oh,
like
okay.
They have it,
okay.
Yeah, where you work and
Gotcha.
where everybody works. They have security cameras.
That's the
that
CCTV.
record. Yeah.
Okay.
So this woman was a chef, and she is on the CCTV camera, and she posted this on TikTok after finding this. She went to her boss, got the camera footage. Boss agreed,
right?
And she posted on her TikTok. Okay, the camera shows her picking up a lemon, and the camera doesn't fuck up in any time during this, so it's not fixed. It's not altered in any way, shape, or form. She puts the lemon on the cutting board, cuts it in half, clearly. Then she turns the lemon, cuts it again, so now it's in fours, right?
Yeah.
She turns around, turns back around. That's how, like 2 seconds, she grabs a bag to put these lemons in.
Yeah.
The lemon is whole again, dog. Never cut. Not once. She picks it up and goes, what the fuck? And it's completely uncut lemon. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's crazy, although but we're still taking somebody's word for it that it's...
Yeah, not doctored.
That's not doctored. You know what I'm saying?
True. I mean, yeah.
Because, I mean, it's like watching, like, the Carbonara Effect.
True.
You ever seen that show on TV?
Yeah,
TV, you know what I mean? I mean, obviously there's... I don't know, but, you know what I'm saying? Like, I definitely think that.
But, I mean,
It's
stuff
not
like
just,
that...
I definitely think not only is it a possibility that we live in a simulation, yeah, I'm pretty sure that we do live in a
Right. Yeah, pretty sure.
in some form or another.
Yeah.
We live in a fractal holographic universe.
Well, it's interesting because if you think about it, your world is dictated by your brain and your perception of what's going on.
Right.
So the way I see the color blue isn't the way you see the color blue.
Right.
Now, we both agree that it's blue, but the way I see it is slightly different than the way you see it. The way I perceive reality is going to be different than the way you perceive it because of how our brain interprets it.
Mm-hmm.
And our brain's interpretation of reality is what dictates reality for you or for me.
Yeah, this is what makes it. I mean, this is what makes everybody an individual. Obviously, is that the way that you're talking about, the way you perceive the world is 100% based on and only on you and your experience, your life.
Right.
And everything that has happened to you through your vantage point in your life is shaped the way that you see things right now, and no two people could ever see things the exact same.
Correct.
But at the same time, we're still all joined together because we're all one consciousness, right? We're just split into different fragments to experience ourselves subjectively.
Well, in the major things, no matter how you perceive them, there's still laws that dictate things.
Right.
So
Universal
we have to
laws,
agree
right.
on universal laws.
Sure.
Like certain physical laws and this and that.
So, yeah, the all is mental, right? That's the first universal law. Then what? I think it's the law of correspondence.
The law of motion.
As above, so below. Yeah. There's the law of polarity.
Yeah. The law of motion, which is...
law of motion or law of vibration.
Yeah.
There's the law of rhythm. There's the law of cause and effect.
Right.
Yeah.
There's the famous Newton laws, objects in motion stay in motion unless enacted upon them by another force.
Right.
Right. An object at rest will stay at rest unless enacted upon by another force.
But so, like, back to a simulation, and like I said, I believe we live in a fractal holographic universe.
Yes.
So basically a fractal, if you have a hologram, you know what I'm saying? Like a hologram image. If you just, any piece of that image, like you could take the tiniest piece of that image, and then if you look at it, if you can microscope down and look at it, it's the same as the entire whole image. Mm-hmm. So, but it's just it's just in little fractals.
Oh, yeah,
kind of like almost like pixels.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And so, and with the law of vibration, right? It states that nothing is at rest.
No,
everything is vibrating. And so if we live in a fractal holographic universe, and I believe that what we live in is a light matrix.
Correct. Yeah.
So right, and like we've talked about this before, where like I said, and everything's vibrating, nothing's at rest, and like so we're actually not solid matter. That's an illusion. We are waves.
Well, everything's in a wave pattern.
Yes, I mean, we are waves of energy.
Well, there's a reason for that.
And it's the frequency that we're vibrating that makes it look like we're solid matter.
Well, that's another thing that's interesting. The higher your frequency, the better your quote-unquote luck, and the more people are drawn to you.
Right, absolutely.
So, yeah, if you operate... See, humans operate at different frequencies depending on who they are. Ones that have bad luck and ones that people shy away from and animals shy away from and all of that, they're operating at a lower frequency than the ones that are operating at a higher. So at a higher frequency, if you think about it, since frequency is dictated by electrons, okay, that's why we're all vibrating, because of the electrical energy in everything.
Right.
So because of that, if you're operating on a higher frequency, you have a higher magnetic pull. So automatically you pull people and other objects towards you because your electrons are actually acting like a magnetic pole and pulling other people's electrons towards you, and other people just seem to like you, but the real reason is the electrons are actually magnetically attracted to each other.
Correct.
And it's interesting that everything's electricity, because we're going to talk a lot about electricity today. I promise you we are. But before we get to that, I wanted to say one thing. I've been off for about a week and a half now looking for another job because the place I did work is a bunch of fucking faggots. I just want everybody to know this, that I hated my job, and I am so glad that I have a new one, and they can go suck on a ball sack,
right,
as far as I'm concerned. And if any of you are listening out there who knew where I work, I'm not going to say their name, but if you know where I work, I'm sure you agree that they are a bunch of fucking queer baits, and they should go fucking suck on a ball sack. Anyways, I digress.
Right.
But what I did want
Now that we got that out of the way.
No, what I did want to say, though, is an interesting thing, and we're going to talk more on this later when I talk about other things. But one of the things that they just interestingly discovered is that the pyramid in Mexico, the one that's the sun pyramid in
Teotihuacan?
Yeah.
Okay.
They just found out that the sun hits it in a way that the blocks actually absorb the sun's energy, which turns it into a what, ladies and gentlemen? A solar panel. Mm-hmm. Right. It's one of the oldest, they believe, solar panels ever in existence. That's what scientists are saying now. Now, of course, you have your detractors, because you always do, because this is the problem with humanity. And I was just talking about this earlier with my wife. This is the problem with humans. And before we go into any of this stuff, because we're going to go into a lot of weird stuff here in a minute, but before we get into it, I want to say this. Humans have a big problem of being caught inside their own little boxes.
Yep.
They believe what they want to believe, and you cannot talk most people out of expanding their mind enough to think past what they have either been taught or what they believe. And mostly it's what they've been taught. That's why Christians believe the way they do. If you ask Christians, most of them, they'll tell you, yeah, my mom was a Christian, or my grandma was a Christian, or this person was a Christian. And yeah, when I was little, I went to church. Well, that right there is programming you to believe something that has no physical basis in reality. See, the same problem is with scientists. They have been taught this for so many years, and so many years they've been saying the same rhetoric. This is when society started. Before that, we were hunter-gatherers. Before that, and this is 100% what happened. Well, see, there's a
mainstream narrative.
Right, and the problem with the narrative is you cannot ever say that's 100% what happened because you don't know.
Exactly.
Right. The problem with archaeology, and I was discussing this earlier, again, before we get into anything, I want to put these bases on here so people understand this. You got to comprehend it like this. If you think about the whole of North America, okay, and you say, I'm going to take your cell phone, okay, and I'm going to put it somewhere in North America, but I'm not going to tell you where, okay, and without knowing where it is at all, I want you to go find it. You would never, never
find it, right?
Ever find it. That is basically what archaeology is. You are, and we're not even talking about North America. Now we're talking about the whole damn earth, including the oceans. And you are looking for technology, and that's their basis that we could have never had an advanced society other than this.
Right.
This is their basis that we're hunter-gatherers. Because the evidence points that way. I get that. And they say, well, we've never found advanced technology. But again, you're looking over the whole earth and you're trying to find possibly a computer. Okay, if I took a computer and just put it, like I said, in our town alone, just the town we live in, and we live in a very small area. And if I just hid a laptop computer in this town and did not tell you where it was, you would never ever find it.
Right.
Right.
And if it became obsolete, if all of our electronics, if something happened that knocked out the power grid and all of our electronics became obsolete, then they would just pile up. They would be absolutely useless.
Well, depending on what.
And not only that, 50 years, 100 years, they would all just decay into nothing.
Well, it depends on what happened to them, too. Because if you think about it, the scientific explanation now of a lot of things like the Ice Age and stuff is this, that a very large asteroid hit this Earth and put a lot of debris in the atmosphere, and that's why the Earth froze and we had an Ice Age. Because it was blocking out the sun, which makes total sense.
Sure.
The Earth would freeze. Well, okay, if an asteroid that big hit the Earth, you've got to understand, it's going to completely obliterate anything on this planet. Okay? Very few people are going to survive. And anything that's made of glass or plastic, like a laptop or a cell phone or anything like that, is now turned into coal and oil. Instantly melted and vaporized. So even if those technologies did exist, you wouldn't find them. Because something like that is like setting a nuclear bomb off that would just eradicate the whole world. Even if they're like the cranes we have now, the bulldozers, stuff like that. If a asteroid of that type hit this Earth, it would turn those into pieces of metal. And all you would find is little pieces of metal here and there.
But that's in the vicinity of where it comes crashing down.
No, you can have a whole Earth destroyer. It happened to the dinosaurs.
Well, the asteroid doesn't blow up the entire Earth.
No, it doesn't blow up
but
the entire Earth.
It blows shit into the atmosphere, like you said, that blocks out the sun, that ends up destroying the entire Earth.
Right, it doesn't even destroy the Earth, it just kind of resets it for a moment.
Right, and so all of that, like all of this stuff you're talking about, cranes and all of the technology, right, this shit is all metal, man-made shit. And yeah, after 100 years, 200 years, 500 years,
thousands,
maybe 1,000 years,
and thousands
of this reset, all of this shit literally corrodes back down into the Earth.
Right, into nothing.
So you would never find it.
And then on top of that...
the thing is, there are they have found pieces of evidence. They've in the Ural Mountains in Russia. I don't know if they were archaeologists or if they were just explorers or who they were, but they actually found down in the earth pieces of nanotechnology. When they put it under a microscope, it was like miniature bolts with coiled wires around it that just like that are in your cell phone. And they found them at a depth that they said was right around 100 to 150,000 years ago. Mm-hmm. That it couldn't have been anything else but that. You know what I'm saying? But to your point about the hunter-gatherer thing, like the mainstream narrative basically is this, that about 6,000 years ago, civilization starts out of nowhere. Mm. And that we, as humans, were hunter-gatherers. And that we have basically been on this progression for 6,000 years until the point now where we're at. And humans beings think that we are the pinnacle and that we are at the pinnacle of technological advancement as human beings on this planet, period. That's what people think.
Well, see, but they've set that back now. Because they're finally starting to accept, because there's certain evidence.
Well, there's too much evidence coming out now.
Well, yeah, and once they found Göbekli Tepe.
Göbekli Tepe.
Yeah, Göbekli Tepe.
In Turkey.
They realized that, wait, we were off by about 10,000 years.
Well, yeah, because the absolute late or soonest that this thing was, they're saying is, 11,500 BC, so 12 to 13,000 years ago.
Right, and originally,
period.
Like you said.
Like that is the very, and it could be way older.
Well, what they're saying now, of course, is the mainstream saying, yes, that's old. Yes, it's at 11,000 years plus. But that wasn't a civilization yet. That was a temple made by hunter-gatherers.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, these hunter-gatherers just came
right.
out the woods and decided on their own to build a temple. The other thing that fucks with the archaeologists and mainstream scientists is this. The original narrative was civilization started first in the Sumerian area. Okay, with Samaria.
Yep.
And then they built temples to God. So religion came out of civilization. It actually, now this proves the exact opposite. Civilization came because of religion. So they built a society
right.
to build this temple, and that's what caused society. But in actuality, what they won't say is what everybody else already, with half a brain, who can think outside, a little bit outside their own self, and isn't like, the medieval
isn't
times.
Locked into a fucking belief system.
Right. They can realize that we are probably much older than that.
Yeah.
That Göbekli Tepe is just the tip
Absolutely.
of an iceberg
right.
of things they have not found yet.
Exactly. Because, if you're talking 12,000 years ago, so that right there doubles how old we've been taught that human civilization.
Yeah, that's 6,000 years before Samaria.
We're not talking about, just somebody put some stones in the ground here.
No.
Okay? We're talking about 19-foot tall granite fucking pillars that are carved and shaped perfectly. And they weigh tons. We're talking tons.
They found six others.
Not in, but on these pillars, and they're not, like I said, they're not etched in. It's almost like that they're protruding out of it.
Yeah, they were dug.
They're like sculpted.
Yeah, these guys dug a hole and dropped these things in here. And not only that, they've since then found 6 other sites in the same area of Turkey there that they're excavating that is part of this whole complex.
Yeah, I think they've only uncovered 5 to 10% of it.
Yeah. And they found 6 others that they haven't even uncovered yet.
Like the vastness of this thing is just incredible.
Or we could go on and talk about another thing. Do you know in the Iraqi desert, there is over 3 pyramids that they know about. And Iraq will not let them investigate any of this. They won't let them go in and look at it. And only the tips are sticking out of the sand. They know they're there.
Right.
They don't know how deep they go.
See, yeah.
And they don't know how many they are. And nobody's been in them for thousands and thousands of years. And they're buried under the sand. Only the tops of them can you see.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I mean, think about all that in Egypt and Iraq, all that region, all that desert.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard telling how much is underneath, that's buried underneath that we haven't found. I mean, look at when the Sphinx was first found. It was just the head.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And another interesting thing about Göbekli Tepe that they're saying is it was not just buried, it was deliberately buried.
Yes, they buried it on purpose.
Somebody buried it on purpose, and not only that, they're saying that burying this complex was probably a more extensive project than building it.
Correct. Yeah. See, that's the problem, is that if these people, but see, this is where you get it. If these people are thinking this way, this is the problem. You've got to basically eliminate everything you've been taught, and you got to say, my whole life was wrong. Everything I know, my core belief system, who I am, is wrong. And you are never going to get an educated person to say that. Because they think they're smart.
It's hard.
They believe they're the smartest, always. And what they've been taught has to be right, because that is what they've known their whole entire life.
Right, and it's too uncomfortable to step outside of it. And even when you know what I'm saying? Even when you know that it's true, that you know what you're believing is wrong, the evidence is put right in front of you. Yeah, people will turn a blind eye because it's too hard to make that shift. Like, when you get hit with a piece of evidence, that completely shifts your paradigm. Like you just said, where you literally have to look at yourself now in the mirror or inside of yourself and be like, am I wrong?
Yeah.
Is what I believe and what I've been taught my entire life wrong?
Yes, if what what I've been preaching and teaching this whole time, because they relate that information and their belief system to who they are.
Yep.
That's their core personality. Mm-hmm. So you're not just changing their belief system, you're changing their whole person.
You're changing, yep.
They've got to admit that everything they did in their whole life was a complete waste of time because everything they believed was incorrect.
And see, it's just, to me, it's like that's what's important, like, about people opening up, dude, like us doing this podcast.
Right.
And people doing, all the podcasts. And like, I've noticed, too, like, that people are more open now to having these conversations.
Well, thank God for people like Graham Hancock and Elon Musk,
Billy
Carson, because they are scientists that are thinking outside the box.
Right.
And it's funny because a lot of people are going to say, well, scientists don't think that way. No, they do, and I can prove it, and I'll show you why I can prove it. Let's go back a long, long time ago when Copernicus first said the earth is not the center of the universe. He was called a heretic. They put him in prison. They threatened to burn him at the stake. And every scientist in the world said, you're insane. There's no way. We know the earth is the middle of the universe, and we know it. Just plain and simple. And then Galileo comes along, says the same thing, and they did the same thing to him. Finally, it was proven, and these guys go, oh, shit, we were wrong. Okay? Just like the Greeks. I think it was Pathalon. I think it was Pathalon is his name. He's the first one that said the earth was round. And when he said it, they said, you're insane. And he said, no, the earth's round. Trust me. I see the moon going around the earth. And if the moon's round and it goes around the earth, and the sun comes back up there, it has to be round.
Yeah.
He said, otherwise we'd burn.
Right.
Right. And the first time Hippocrates, another great Greek scientist, said, hey, the gods aren't cursing us. There's diseases. They said, you're a heretic and you're wrong. You're insane. There's no way these imaginary microscopic organisms are what's killing people. Hell, the first doctor who told them in the Renaissance period to wash their hands because there were germs, he was laughed out of the scientific practice until they figured out that, hey, germs are real.
No, that was a real thing. Yeah, I can't remember. They called it something.
But, I mean...
Yeah, basically women were having a problem with women dying during childbirth.
Yeah, well, they were also having a problem during surgeries. Well, these people were getting staph infections, and the guy said, hey, if you wash your hands, they won't get staph infections.
This was at the same time where they just started to do autopsies.
Yeah.
They were starting to do autopsies on corpses.
Yep.
And then they were going into surgeries and delivering babies in the afternoon, right? And it took 30 fucking years.
Yes.
30 fucking years for them to finally heed the advice of, I can't remember the guy's name.
Yeah, I can't either. And how he proved it was the invention of the microscope.
Yes.
When they invented the microscope, he said, look, I'll show you these things exist.
Yes.
And when he showed them in the microscope, they all had to admit he was right.
Right, yes, because what he basically figured out was these deaths were being caused because they aren't washing their fucking hands.
Right, they were being caused by staph.
They're fumbling around in dead bodies,
right,
and then going and delivering a baby, and they can't.
Yeah,
but see, that's the point, though.
Yeah.
At that point in time, like to us, it sounds absolutely insane.
Right, but at that
point in time, what was insane was the person that said, "Wash your hands."
Right, just like nowadays, for instance, Nikola Tesla. Okay, and we're going to talk about him in a moment. But he built the Wafer Tower. Or the Wayward Tower? What is it? Wayford. Wardenclyffe, thank you. The Wardenclyffe Tower. And Nikola Tesla sparked electricity out of this tower, coming from the ground, and it dissipated in the air. And Nikola Tesla said, this will be a way to transmit wireless signals across the earth. Yep. And they said, you are completely out of your mind. You're insane. There's no way to transmit wirelessly across the earth without wires. And he said, of course there is, if you would just listen to me.
Right.
Right? They said, no way. Now, what do we have nowadays? It's something called Wi-Fi, which is directly based on the research of Nikola Tesla, which he figured out in 1901. But in 1901, they said you're insane. Absolutely. And nowadays, people would say you're insane not to believe in Wi-Fi.
100%. And this, I just thought about this a couple weeks ago. I don't even, common sense, folks. Use common sense. Our cell phones and our computers are all working on a wireless signal, just like you said. Mm-hmm. Wireless electricity.
Wireless electricity and
electricity moving wirelessly, transferring from device to device.
Correct.
Yet, we still have electric wires running into our homes.
Right.
Why is that?
Because there's too much money in it.
Exactly.
Of course. Now, what we really are getting into today, and we've been hinting on it for about 30 minutes now, but what we're getting into is we have talked about the pyramids before. We've talked about Nikola Tesla before, and we've talked about the Emerald Tablets. Well, I started doing a lot of research, and what I found out is they all connect, and not only do they all connect, but the stuff that people are working on in the technological field, which they are now calling the fourth revolution of society, like not, how the industrial revolution, we had the farming revolution, now we're in the fourth revolution of society, which is the information age. Mm-hmm. So what they're saying is now they're working on projects that back up everything that people have thought for years. So the first one I wanted to start on was, again, the tomb of Khufu. which is, of course, better known as the Giza.
The Great Pyramid.
The Great Pyramid of Giza.
Right.
Now,
interesting, because you were talking about the Teotihuacan Pyramid of the Sun in Mexico.
Correct.
How it might have been a solar panel.
Yeah.
There's a certain time of year and a certain sun angle that hits the Great Pyramid. It's actually an 8-sided pyramid.
Oh, yeah.
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 Pretty wild. But it's only noticeable from above.
Mm-hmm.
See, and that's my thing. Right there.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody with common sense, dude, if you're willing to just think outside the box for just a second, just 1 second, we didn't start flying. Our civilization, our society didn't start air travel till early 1900s.
Right.
Right.
And speaking of, when Leonardo da Vinci invented the first helicopter, they called him insane. Well, they said you'll never be able to fly.
He had the plans for it.
Yeah, he actually invented the hang glider,
yes.
technically. He jumped off a building and floated with a big kite on him, and they said, you'll die if you do it. And he said, no, I got this.
It is understood that it wasn't until the early 1900s that we could fly.
Correct.
The pyramids, no matter how old you think they are, the mainstream is going to give you 5,000-6,000 years.
Well, that's how
bottom line is they're at least that old, correct?
Yeah, they're about 6,000 years old by carbon dating. The Sphinx is much older, but
we didn't start flying until the early 1900s.
Right.
There's a certain time of the year where the sun hits the Great Pyramid, and if you are looking at it from above, and only from above can you see it, is 8-sided.
Yes. Yes.
Then that means when they were built, that someone was able to fly up above it.
Well, this is what I was going to say before we get into the pyramids. Another interesting invention that they have just really kind of came out with recently and are starting to even now refine. They haven't got to the point where it actually works completely. I mean, it works, but it's not refined where it holds enough energy. You know what a lithium-ion battery is, correct? Mm-hmm. Okay, it uses lithium particles and ions, which are electricity ions. If anybody doesn't know electricity, ions are negative and positive electrical electrons. And when you take a negative electron and a positive electron, it generates electricity when it passes through metal, which is lithium. That's a lithium-ion battery. Now, what they've invented now, and is funny because this ties right into what we're going, they've invented something called a salt battery. A salt battery is filled with an electrolyte solution because chloride by itself does not conduct electricity. Sodium chloride as a mineral by itself will not conduct electricity, but when you dissolve sodium chloride in water, making salt water, okay, the sodium chloride dissipates and the ions break apart, okay? Therefore, they conduct a lot of electricity when they break. Now, if you stick a negative terminal on one side of salt water, a positive in the other, and have like 4 metal rods in the back to absorb the power, it creates a very large amount of electrical current. Okay? The only problem is this battery has to be really big with a lot of water in it. Now, they've just invented this battery recently. It's called a saltwater battery, and they think it's the future of batteries. Okay?
Really?
Yeah, and it produces a lot of current. It's self-sustaining.
Sure.
Now, let's get into Giza on this one. They've recently found, within the last, 10 years, through research, that there are multiple layers under the pyramids that they did not know. Giza has at least 150-foot drop from where the Queen's Chamber would be, where what they named the Queen's Chamber. Because let's also point this out. They've never found the kings and queens in the pyramids.
No, there's actually,
Right.
They claim the pyramids are tombs, but there's actually
Never been a body
pyramid.
found in any pyramid. They know who built them because of the dynasty they're on. That's why Giza's called Khufu.
No, they think. They say that this is who built them.
Right. Well, but they know when they were built. So
no, they don't know. I mean, there's no way to define that either.
Well, they know they know when the stones were there. By carbon dating, they know when the stones came about out of the quarry and were sitting there. So they know when the stones got there, about 6,000 years ago. So they take that information, say...
See, that's incorrect.
Oh, it's not?
No, because Thoth, of the Emerald Tablets, claims that he built the pyramid.
Oh, yeah.
And... Billy Carson basically said that he thinks the pyramids are at least 60,000 years old.
Oh, no shit.
At least 60,000 years old, but maybe older. See, because that's the thing. Carbon dating you're only going to get a good carbon dating date with organic material.
Yeah.
So you could carbon date stones all you want. You're not going to get an accurate reading.
Well, see,
these motherfuckers could be 1 billion years old.
Well, you see, you are right about
but
that.
You're not, but that's not making my argument for when they were built, cut, and quarried and placed.
Yeah, well, see, that's where you're right, too, because the stones could have been cut or in the quarry at a certain time, but they don't know how long those stones had been sitting in that quarry.
Correct.
So the stones might be 6,000 years old based on carbon emissions. But again, like you said, carbon dating is not an exact science. But anyways, that's why that's why they call it Khufu's pyramid, based on carbon dating. That was my whole point.
Right, well, yeah. that and it was it's a whole story. There was a I can't remember his name, there was an explorer from Europe that goes and basically goes to the pyramids, and they have funded him all this fucking money, and he is under pressure to bring some kind of evidence back, and so they literally think...
I cannot remember that guy's
this dude literally wrote Khufu, because there are no hieroglyphics in the Great Pyramid anywhere.
No.
And every other pyramid has hieroglyphics everywhere.
Yes.
And so it's like, why would this, you know what I mean? It's just a whole, it's a whole...
Well, as we get into hieroglyphics, that's another thing. Hieroglyphics are based on someone's interpretation. We're not really sure what hieroglyphics mean.
Correct.
Someone said, this is what it looks like, this is what it is, but no one is around that can still read them for real.
Right. And you're taking somebody's word for it.
Correct.
100%.
You're taking someone who has no idea what they really are. That's just based on his assumptions. And like the oldest saying in the book, I think, when you assume, you make an ass out of you and me, and unbelievably the rest of the world.
Right. But to the age of the pyramid again, because back to the Emerald Tablets, and we were talking about the everything that's being now found underneath the Great Pyramid. Thoth talks about the halls of Amenti, and that the halls of Amenti are basically halls, tunnels, underneath the Great Pyramid, where he goes and regenerates. It's a regeneration chamber.
See, I was going to talk about this, but you're getting way ahead of me.
Oh, okay.
You're jumping way ahead of where I was. I was getting back to the original thing that I was talking about the saltwater battery that we just invented.
Yeah.
Now,
because that's interesting too.
Yes.
That salt water carries the electric current.
Yeah.
Just think about what the Earth is.
Well, this is the other thing. This is what they found inside the pyramid, and I will say it to people so everybody can make their own interpretation. I'm not going to lead this conversation right now. I'm just going to tell you the facts, and you can make up your own mind on that one. The king's chamber is on top. The queen's chamber is on bottom. They know that some of the chambers were built by, or some of the tunnels that go into the pyramid were built by thieves, so they eliminated those. They know there was an original tunnel that came and directly went into the king and queen's chamber and bypassed the two chambers, but was like a drop. So part of it could go in the kings, part of it in the queens. Now, there's tunnels under the pyramid, shafts, not tunnels, just shafts. And there's levels. Now, they can go on the first 2 levels. The third level, interestingly enough, is filled with water. Now, let me explain this. There's no water on the plateau. None. Never was. Even when that was a lush green area, which was 10, 20,000 years ago.
Right.
The Sphinx sits lower. The pyramids sit up on a hill, like a plateau. There was never water up there. It was always dry. Okay. The Nile is over 100 miles away. So it's not coming from there. The ocean now was flooded at one time by the Mediterranean Sea. They know that. But that was over about 30,000 BC. So 30,000 years before us. So 32,000 years ago, the Mediterranean Sea kind of dissipated. So that's a long fucking time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
And the pyramids are already there, mind you.
Now, they pump this water out, trying to get down to the lower levels, because they know there's shafts even lower than the ones they can get to.
Right.
The water rises back up. Where's it coming from? They cannot figure out where this water is coming from. They can't, even the scientists who don't believe any of this shit that I'm about to say, cannot tell you where that water comes from. Another interesting fact, this water has a really high concentration of sodium chloride.
Really?
It is pure salt water, a really high concentration of salt water, higher than the sea, higher than the lakes, higher than anything around there. The salt water content there is so high that it's almost pure sodium chloride in water. Now we'll go even farther. You remember me talking about the king and queen's chambers, right? That this is what they named them. Yeah. Okay, mind you.
Right.
Now the chamber up above that we're going to call the kings and the queens both have water and chemical erosion symbols halfway up the chamber. The sarcophagi in those chambers each have 4 holes in the back of the top of the sarcophagus, where it looks like rods once were inserted.
Oh, wow.
Here's the really interesting thing. In between the king and queen's chamber, there is, stones, limestone, connecting the 2 chambers that directly come from where the erosion would be, all the way up to the king's chamber where the erosion is. In the queen's chamber, they found copper strands. In the king's chamber, they found gold. Now, I'm going to tell you what copper and gold is. Copper produces a negative ion. Gold produces a positive ion. So if you add salt water, again, a saltwater battery.
You're talking about a humongous saltwater battery.
What did I just say? The problem is with the saltwater batteries they have right now. They're not big enough because you need a really big saltwater battery to produce a significant amount of charge.
Right.
Now, limestone conducts electricity. Small amounts, mind you. But huge blocks of limestone would conduct a lot bigger amount of electricity. So, if you have a positive charge in one chamber filled with salt water, you have a negative charge in another chamber filled with salt water, and you have a conductive salt mineral like limestone connecting the 2, what do you have? The thing we just learned how to invent, a giant saltwater battery. And the chamber on the outside that connects to those 2 chambers would have been a perfect way for them to do what? Fill back up the battery full of salt water. Right. Now, the other interesting thing about the Great Pyramid is granite is in it. Okay, they built it with certain stones, and nobody could understand why they use different stones.
And they use not it's granite, but you're talking about really hard to cut stone here.
We're getting more into this because see, for everybody out there who doesn't know, I have done a lot of electrical. I'm an electrician. So I'm going to try to explain most of this in layman's terms, but I kind of know what I'm talking about on this. Granite does not really produce electricity, but there's an interesting thing about granite. You know what it's full of? Iron. You know what iron does when electricity passes through it? It makes magnets. Right. Now, the stones were placed with granite. In between the granite was bauxite. Bauxite bricks produce they're a huge conductor of electricity. Electricity just shoots through them. The outside of the granite is rubbed with white limestone, one of the best conductors, stone-wise, of electricity. Mm-hmm. Not only that, do you know what white limestone also does? It's used in LED lights. Why? Because it glows when you pass electricity through it. Mm-hmm. So, if you have salt water, a salt bridge, and you have the two poles to make the electricity, okay, now, in between all of this was also insulators, mortar, concrete, right? Now, that insulates the fucking electricity you're bringing. But what would happen if you passed a huge amount of electricity through white limestone at that big of a pyramid? It would glow like the sun. Mm-hmm. It would glow like an LED light bulb. So yeah, the Great Pyramid, there's pretty much no doubt at this point that Giza was an electrical conductor and that they used it, as a huge power plant. That's why the pyramids in line with Giza are smaller, because they were smaller power plants. And interesting enough, they just found out that they're all connected by those tunnels.
Right. And so, and then what you're talking about too, is a battery producing electricity that can then be connected wirelessly. And then that would make fucking complete perfect sense then to why no matter where you go on this planet, you will find pyramids
and
obelisks.
The top of the pyramid is pure limestone, which means that all that energy that it was storing was discharged through the top. And then you're right, they could use wireless electricity in Egypt way before we knew how to harness any of that.
Yeah, well, and it's conceivable that maybe there in Giza you're talking about the main power plant, but it's conceivable then that it was transforming energy not just in the Egypt area, possibly wirelessly throughout the entire world.
Well, that's what Tesla said it was doing.
He said he could do it, and he not only said that, he said he could transmit electricity wirelessly planetary.
Yes,
he could transfer it planet to planet.
Well, not only that, they're doing it now with lithium. Mm-hmm. They're trying to figure out. There is a place right now in Europe where they are inventing renewable energy with not lithium, but limestone. They melt the limestone, it produces CO2, the limestone gets hard again, and then it melts again.
Really?
That produces a huge amount of energy, which they are doing to make electricity. And limestone isn't used up because it melts, it gets hard. It melts, it gets hard.
Yeah.
It's just a continuous process. So it would be free energy. But it's never going to happen.
Right.
Because the powers that be aren't going to let that happen.
Just what you just said, free.
Right.
Which is the whole reason the Wardenclyffe Tower thing got shut down.
Of course.
When J.P. Morgan found out what Tesla was doing, he pulled the funding.
You're right.
It's back to the water underneath the pyramid too, because that you mentioned that, because I've seen some things too where they underneath the pyramid, there's places where there's evidence of compression waves, where water was being pumped, and it was, and a wave was hitting this certain part, right, over and over and over, because in just that one part, there's erosion of the stone,
right,
where they're that's pure, there's no question,
right,
that is evidence that there was water being pumped into here,
right,
and they think then that the pumping of the water was then what caused the vibration of the entire pyramid then would obviously help in shooting the energy out or whatever.
Well, see, also this, you got to think about it. You don't only have erosion from water on these stones. You have chemical erosion from salt.
Yeah, dude, that's
and chloride.
And that, right.
So you know it was an electrolyte solution that was pumped into there. Right. That's why that shaft that connects to the King and Queen's chamber, they know water was poured down there because there's chemical erosion on the shaft.
And there, you mentioned earlier too, and this is a good point, that there are literally fucking electrical markings like you would see on a electrical box nowadays. Christopher Dunn, the guy's name is Christopher Dunn. Mm-hmm. You can look him up. Anybody can Google him, Christopher Dunn. And he's done a lot of research at the Great Pyramid. And they're the ones that they built like a fucking robot to go down the shaft, I think to look in, it was either into the Queen or King's chamber. And they got down to that shaft and it was blocked by something. Mm-hmm. So then they had to fucking, retool their robot to be able to drill a little hole so they could slide a camera in. And that's where they seen the fucking electrical markings.
Right. And not only that, why is the Great Pyramid hermetically sealed? Which means waterproof, airtight. There's doors in there. Yeah. And again, they don't know how the Egyptians figured out when they're hunter-gatherers or whatever the fuck they were, how to seal something like it's submarine. Mm-hmm. Right. So you've got doors that are sealing chambers off in there that are sealed airtight and watertight. Why would they make a chamber air and watertight unless you're storing water in there? There's no reason.
Right, storing energy.
Right. Yeah. You don't want the water to come out of those two chambers, so what would you do? Make watertight doors. Well, what's in the Great Pyramid? Watertight doors. I mean, that's just 2 and 2 makes 4, motherfucker.
Right.
I mean, really?
Right.
I mean, with all of that evidence, for you to say the pyramids weren't some type of energy source is insane. You can't keep saying they were tombs when, A, you found no mummies.
Right.
But you find...
Dude, we talked about this too. They claim that these pharaohs and shit are that buried at these pyramids, that these pyramids are tombs. No, they're all buried at one place called the Valley of the Kings.
Yes, right outside of Thebes.
And so I don't, man, it's just, I mean, it's getting to the point, like you said, it's the information age. It's all at our fingertips. Like, the evidence is overwhelming. If you're choosing to not at least be open to it, then you're just choosing to be a dick.
You're just choosing to be stupid to reality.
Right.
Okay, the other thing about these pyramids are, the first pyramid is the exact size and circumference, and we've talked about this before, Giza, is the exact size and circumference of the earth and points directly north. The next pyramid, which is a little bit smaller, do you know what it's the exact size and circumference of?
Moon?
Venus.
Oh, really?
And then Mars.
Okay.
And then the smallest pyramid is the one in the row that's the size of the moon. Not only that, but if you take mathematical calculations, it points to Venus every time of the year.
Ooh, really?
So as the Earth rotates, each of the pyramids point to their respective bodies in the universe. Yeah. So that tells you something else. If nothing else, if you don't believe anything else I just said, you have to admit the Egyptians had more knowledge of the size of the Earth, where the Earth was positioned into celestial bodies, and the size of Venus, Mars, and the moon.
Where do they get this information?
Yeah.
How do they know?
According to you guys, they built these things with rope pulleys and logs.
Yeah.
But you're telling me a society that had to use ropes, pulleys, and logs, first of all, that's retarded as hell because some of these blocks weigh well over 10 tons. But let's just get this. They're pulling 10-ton blocks up an incline, 3,000 feet in the air. That's miraculous to start with, the fact that they could do that. Well,
dude, like the whole building of the pyramid, like, yeah.
It's just idiotic.
It's literally placed right in the center of the Earth's landmass.
Yeah, it's right on the equator.
So, like, you take not the Earth itself, but the Earth's landmass, and you have to literally be able to put a mathematical calculation to that to know exactly where the center is. The Great Pyramid of Giza is literally right in the dead middle of the Earth's landmass.
And you know,
how does that happen?
Crazy.
And then you take the height, right? The average. So you take all the heights of the Earth's landmass, all the valleys, all the mountains, all the peaks. You take all of that, add it up, and you come up with, like, I think maybe 451 or whatever it is. However tall the Great Pyramid is exactly the average height of the Earth's landmass.
Right. Plus, it sits on the equator, exactly dead center on the north-south poles. Now, why would you set something on the poles directly in magnetic pull of the Earth that is made of huge magnetic stones unless you are using magnetic energy to power it?
Right.
I mean, come on now. Again, you can call it science fiction, but that seems like pretty compelling evidence to me.
Absolutely.
Not only that, but a lot of people don't know this. There are pyramids. Every single continent in this world has pyramids. China, Iraq, Europe, South America. You know the only one that doesn't? Us. North America is the only place in the world where you do not find pyramids. Everywhere else, Mexico, South America, Europe, Asia, Africa, Greece, there's these huge pyramids that are built that all sit kind of on the same earth line. So you're telling me these hunter-gatherers not only all built pyramids, and they were all tombs, mind you, all of them. They all had the same idea, Jason. Every single one of them.
Right.
Yeah, nobody gave them that idea. They all just came up with it on their own that pyramids would be the way to go. Okay?
So here's some of the, here's some of the free numbers. Okay. If you were to multiply the base perimeter of the Great Pyramid, so this is all based on the numbers 432 and 72, right? 72 and 432 can be found in a number of ancient mythologies and sacred texts, including 72, the number of languages spoken at the Tower of Babel, 72, the number of names for God in Jewish Kabbalah, 72, the number of temples at Angkor Wat, 72, the number of degrees longitude between Angkor Wat and the Great Pyramid, 432,000, the number of syllables in the Hindu Rig Veda, 432, the harmonic frequency believed to be an optimal resonance for music.
Mm-hmm.
So, so you take these numbers, like the base perimeter of the Great Pyramid, take that and times it by 432, or 43,200, and you get the Earth's equatorial circumference. So you take the perimeter of the Great Pyramid, okay, times that by 43,200, and that gives you the exact measurement of the Earth if you were to measure it all the way around the equator.
Yes, if you use that scale, it's actually the Earth in the number of seconds in a half day. That meant the kings of the 4th Egyptian dynasty not only knew that the Earth was round and its size nearly 25,000 years before the Greeks proclaimed it, but by incorporating a second base scale in the pyramid design, they also used the same measure of time that we do 40 centuries ago. They knew our calendar, how to calculate 24 hours a day and all of that 2,500 years before the Greeks even figured out the Earth was round. Not only that, they knew the Earth was round. Not only that, each pyramid is representative of the solar system right above it.
Exactly. Exactly. They not only knew everything about this earth, they knew everything about the heavens.
Mm-hmm.
And how we move in relationship to it.
Mm-hmm.
And where did this knowledge come from? How did they know this stuff? And there's no way that they could have built those things without some kind of advanced technology.
See, as you look at the pyramids, especially Giza, it's shown as a huge galvanic cell that generated and stored direct current electricity. That's what it was made for. There's no way to go around it. You look the way it was built, you look what's in it, and you look how the chambers are connected. It was built as a huge magnetic cell to store and direct DC power, and they could use it wirelessly because of the stones on top emitted the electricity into the environment.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I mean...
the electricity went up the pyramid. That's why it's built like a pyramid. And that's why Tesla built the towers like a pyramid. And then if you think about it, what does a cell tower look like? A pyramid. Why? Because electric energy is generated up the cell tower to the point on top and then dispersed into the environment, and that's how we get Wi-Fi signals.
Right.
That's how you get a cell phone signal. That's how you get wireless energy and technology. It's based on something that Egyptians knew. And not only Egyptians, like I said, there's pyramids all over the world that use this same kind of technology.
100%.
Yeah, and all of these ancient cultures that we said were stupid knew all of this 25,000 years before the Greeks even knew that the world was round.
Yeah, exactly. And even when the first Greeks tried to say the world was round, they goddamn burned them.
Right.
But I mean, I was, ever since I started watching Age of Aliens, I was like leaning towards the fact that I think that the pyramids are probably some kind of power plant. But then with everything you said about the saltwater shit, like that just like
that can
ironclads.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, like
100%.
I mean, it's obvious.
Yeah, it's a salt battery.
Right.
It's a giant fucking salt battery.
And like you said, that they not only knew how to build, but they made it perfect, absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
That it not only still stands, it probably still fucking works to this day, and we still can't figure it out.
Well, the problem is to recharge a battery of that size would be astronomically hard.
Well, of course it would, but it was probably astronomically hard to build the son of a bitch, too.
True. But we're going to end this episode because we're getting on, but this is only part 1.
Yeah.
We're about ready to start part 2, but this week we will post part 1. Now, if you want to hear part 2 after this, which is going to go in this deeper and get into some other things about the Emerald Tablets and Nikola Tesla, listen to next week's episode, which will be episode 54, and I will post that next week, and you can hear part 2 of this whole conversation. But I thank you guys for listening, and if you enjoyed it, leave us a like, a review, something.
Appreciate
it. And we will talk to you next time.
Later.